Hi there, I'm Joyce Becker, a resident of Fairhope of some 20 years. I'd like to tell you why a northerner would come south. First of all, it had to do with a health problem. I have Raynaud's disease, where the capillaries turn cold. The fingertips, everything, just get out in the snow and I freeze. So the doctor suggested, why not go south, or we amputate, and once we amputate, that's it. Taking his suggestion, my husband and I went to the library. Lo and behold, under places to retire, why, there was Kentucky Lakes, but my husband was not a fisherman, so that didn't interest us. We tried Fort Lauderdale and Daytona Beach. Oh, that was full of old folks. So we drove through Fairhope. Didn't know anybody, but it looked stimulating. And stimulating it has turned out to be. So we moved here about 20 years ago it was. And right off, it seems like they were nice to us seniors. We were retired. They offered programs right off. I took some art programs at Faulkner College here, and then a local art studio had some nice artists, and they opened their studio for us. So the first thing I did was take some pastel work, and I want to show you. Here was one of the first things I did. It's done in pastel. I've gone from pastel now to doing pastel, but doing more portraits was more challenging. Well, if that wasn't challenging enough and stimulating enough, I went to the Nick Center, and that's a senior center here in town, and they had some nice programs, and one, Monty Hughes lived here, and he was well known as a musician, and he was offering keyboard lessons, and I thought, that'd be fun, especially his price was right, which was nothing, and took some lessons with him. I just wished I'd learned to play the keyboard better, but it gave me interest in music. So I had a desire to express myself on how I felt about Fairhope. So I sat down one time and thought, well, I'm just going to make a song myself. Let's see what I would say. It's called Lovely Fairhope. And it says, now here's a town you all call Fairhope, where the trees and flowers grow, where the people are so friendly, they're ever ready with hello. You can go shopping, golfing, sailing, fishing, walking on the pier. You can try acting, writing, singing, dancing, painting what is near. So it's Fairhope, lovely Fairhope, where the kids and cats do play. Oh, come see Fairhope, lovely Fairhope, and you'll never go away. So that's what happened to my husband and I. And when he died some 10 years ago, I wanted to be sure we'd be here. So here I have a picture of what's called Mid-Bay Lighthouse. I had his ashes thrown around Mid-Bay Lighthouse. So if he's here, I'm going to be here, and I've enjoyed every moment of it. Bye-bye.
Hi, my name's Louie Blaze. I've been in Fairhope now for about 15 years, but this is the end of sort of a journey. My original ancestors came from Italy and the Czech Republic, at the time called Czechoslovakia, and they settled here in the early 1900s. My grandfather, my paternal grandfather, his name was Louie Blaze. He was a tailor, and he came to this country, New York, to be a tailor. And my maternal grandfather's name was Luigi Fabrizio, and he was a stone cutter in Naples, Italy. And he came to South Carolina, probably through Canada, as near as we can figure. And he came to South Carolina because of the blue granite quarries that were there. And he primarily did tombstones, the flower work on it. I lived most of my life in South Carolina, and my trek down to Alabama came as a result of work. I went to work for a pharmaceutical company, and I traveled most of South Alabama, which is how I got to know Fairhope a little bit. We we pretty much lived in and around Mobile since 1967 till about 1997 when we built a house over here. In my travels on the southern part of the state, I literally fell in love with Fairhope. I used to come over here about one day a month and called on the doctors and the hospitals and the pharmacies. So I kind of was predestined to move here. My wife wasn't real anxious to move here to start off because it was kind of far away, and all of our children were over in Mobile, and she was a little reluctant to move here. But now that she has moved here, she is very, very, very happy we are here. I do a lot of volunteer work in town, work here at the museum as a docent, the library, arts and crafts shows. So it's a lifestyle here is just laid back and is absolutely wonderful. I'm not involved in the politics of Fairhope. Don't care to be. I just want to be a law-abiding citizen and live out all my days here because it really is pretty spectacular. So I'm only second generation in this country. So I don't have the history that a lot of people have, but it's been a nice journey, and I really, really do like living here. It is an outstanding community. Mine probably differs from a lot of people that have come into this area. Like I say, my family immigrated here in the early 1900s. Some coming through Ellis Island, the other probably coming through Canada. So we're pretty much American family for the last 100 years. Thank you for listening.
Hello, my name is Ann Maradik, and my grandfather came to Fairhope, Alabama in 1930. He came here and bought 40 acres of land and started a farm and cleared the land and built some homes, his home. And first of all, the first home was a shack. And then he built for them to live in until he could build a bigger home for them. And then he built some chicken coops and a barn and was raising animals. And my dad would come here and help him out in the summer. He would come for his vacation with his family, my family, and they would work on the farm in the morning, and then in the afternoon they would go down to the bay to swim in the wonderful clear water of the bay, of Fairhope Bay. And then they would go to Pensacola and the Gulf and explore all the area around here. And we would love coming to Fairhope, Alabama. So as a child, this was the highlight of our year when we would have vacation coming to visit Grandpa and Grandma in Fairhope, Alabama. In 1945, my father decided he was going to come here too. So he bought a plot of land at the very north end of Bishop Road and started a chicken farm. He raised chickens, and I loved living here. I was only about 5 or 6 years old at that time, and I loved it in Alabama here. My dad, we had a little pecan orchard, and my dad would let me go and pick eggs, and we would, he even helped me to milk a cow once, and this was just so wonderful to live here in Fairhope. And my mother didn't care to live here too much, so after about a year, my dad sold the farm and we moved back to Wisconsin. And even though I was so small, I treasured Fairhope a lot. And we would come to visit here. We would continue to spend our week's vacation here each year. And then My aunt lived here also, and and her husband. They lived in Robertsdale. They moved to Robertsdale and worked at making beautiful pottery out of the clay that was from the ground in the area. And they would sell it to the people who would travel down to the Gulf. And they made beautiful pottery. So this was always a treasure place for me. And I could hardly wait to move back here. But I had to wait many years because I had to retire first. So I spent my adult years up north in Wisconsin, the state of Wisconsin, and worked there. And when I retired, I thought, oh, I want to move back to Fairhope. So I did, and it just so happened that the farm that my grandfather started, after he died, and then my grandmother died, my uncle took over the farm, and he moved here from Illinois, and he started a dairy farm on my grandfather's property. And this would have been in the early 50s. So he spent the rest of his life raising his 4 children, and with his wife, he lived here in Fairhope. And in 2005, he died, and the house was vacant. My cousins inherited the property and the home. They renovated the home, and it was just in time for me to move to Fairhope. I had just retired, and now I live in the house that my grandfather built in 1935. This was the second home that he built in 1935, and I'm so proud to live there. My cousins own the land and they own the home, so I rent the home from them. The home is a little bigger than my grandfather built because my cousins lived there. You know, it was a bigger family then, and so my Uncle John Maradik built rooms, additional rooms to the home. So in 2006, my cousins renovated the whole home, and I am so proud to live there now. I love living in Fairhope. And so when I moved here, one of the first things I did was I explored all the wonderful area of Fairhope. I loved going down to the bay. I joined St. Lawrence Church. I explored the Nick Center, and when the Fairhope Museum of History was built, then I just had to be a docent here. So I really got to learn more and more about the history of Fairhope, and I work with Donnie Barrett, who is the director of the Museum of History in Fairhope, and I learn just more and more as the exhibits go up, and I treasure all the time that I have here. We have an elderberry festival, and I enjoy learning about elderberries and picking elderberries in Fairhope, and making elderberry jam and learning new recipes and how to use them. So there's always something exciting and beautiful happening in Fairhope. I love the art festivals that are in Fairhope, and I am so proud to have friends and relatives come to visit me so that I can show them this wonderful place of Fairhope. Thank you.
My name is Robert McKee. I was a second dentist on the Eastern Shore in 1959. I'd come for many years from Mobile, Alabama, over here to Fairhope, and I got out of the Air Force and was told that it's a wonderful place to come over here in Fairhope. I married a lady that was from Fairhope native named Rochelle Nelson McKee, and I had a wonderful time. I retired from the dental profession in 1959 and came here in 1959, and then I retired in 1999. So Fairhope is a wonderful place. They got wonderful people, and the influence here is wonderful. Everybody is in Fairhope has done a great job. And like I say, when I was younger, we used to come over here and go swimming off the big pier. And it was great. I loved every minute of it. And in fact, it was just unbelievable. And of course, things have changed a lot now. We've gotten a lot of folks from around the area to come over here. We do have a lot of people coming in the wintertime from up in the Midwest, and they're wonderful people. Play golf out at Quail Creek with them, and they're just nice folks. And so that's my story, and I love to be here in Fairhope. I was over at practice for 40-something years, and I wouldn't miss it for one day in the world. So again, this is a great town and a wonderful place, and I'm happy to be here, and thank you very much for Fairhope and its people. Bye-bye.
Hello, I'm Eloise Rogers. I'm a docent at the Fairhope History Museum in Fairhope, Alabama. This is my second home and certainly my play spot. I'm here 2 or 3 days a week, sometimes more. I came to Fairhope in November of 1984. My daughter was here, and I had come to visit a few times. And born and raised in Ohio, I wanted to get away from the cold and snow. So I came here, and this is absolutely home. I don't go north of I-10 in the wintertime. Who wants to get cold again? I had a husband that was had some illnesses and handicapped, and when he went to a nursing home, I looked for something to do to keep busy. This new museum building was just about ready to open up for work, so I volunteered, and I had the thrill of going through dozens of boxes that had never been opened since they were donated. I found just wonderful, wonderful surprises. It was like Christmas. I got to hold a lot of things that belonged to our founders. We have all kind of medicine bags and instruments. There are dishes. There are pottery from where the young students made when they were at the organic school. There's just all kind of documents. And being at the museum, I get to visit with the most interesting people. They come in here from all over the world. I had a couple from Russia and so on. They just continue to come in. More outsiders than there are Fairhope people, it seems. But talking to people, watching the displays being set up, it was so interesting, because just like going to a movie, you sit and watch the movie without thinking about all the work in the back. But now seeing what goes on behind one of these very simple displays, it's amazing. And I've gotten to help work on the displays. And like I say, I got to help pack the old museum and bring it over. So I've seen some of these things 2 or 3 times. And when we get ready to do a display, word kind of gets out around town, and it's people just keep bringing in more and more to add to our collections. Things funny how things just keep getting out, and the donations that come in. Why, if this building hit the street in the back of it was that big, we wouldn't be able to display everything. And we have wonderful, wonderful comments about everything. People say, well, I have been in some of the biggest museums in the country, and this is first class. And our director, of course, Donnie Barrett, you couldn't beat him for knowledge. Thank you, Eloise. The newcomers are always surprised at all he can do and things he can remember. And it's just fun being here. All the docents get along so well, and training new ones and getting to tell them, show them some of the things to do. And now we have a gift shop we're getting set up. And our town is so full of artists of all sorts. And so we have some of our authors' books. And then on tea time, Thursdays at 2 o'clock, we serve the tea that Donnie grows on his plantation, tea and cookies. And we have speakers come in and tell us something about the town. They either grew up here or they've had a long-standing business, or some of maybe Tom Morley will come in and play music, or Sonny Brewer will come in a book. It's just a continuous joy around here. And then we have different things going on. We're going to have an Elderberry Festival coming up soon. That's third, fourth one. In November, since the founders came here in November, we have a Founders Day. We have a band, kind of an Appalachian type band, and we have a lot of food and dancing and fun. We've had things, we have a World War II display now, and so we've had a lot of World War II veterans in here, and we're going to have another thing with them soon. This town is just, the whole town is a beautiful, wonderful, lovely town, and I get to tell all about it and the wonderful history. We apparently had the first public library in the state, even though many of these towns are so much older. We had the first ice cream producing plant. It goes on, and the Gollies, they could tell a lot of history if they ever got the kudzu out of them. And the people talk about the pier and the friendliness of the clerks, and the people smile and talk to you in town on the streets. So I couldn't have found a better place to land. And meanwhile, my daughter moved north, but I stayed right here. I can't leave this town. This is home, home sweet home Alabama. We're getting all these interviews now, which hear people's various sides of the thing. And then there are people that come in here, like Frank Laraway. He's in here fairly often. He writes little short stories about being raised in Fairhope. It was the only farm inside the city limits. And he'll talk about, one book was about his table manners, mother's table manners, and growing up on the farm and milking the cows and things like that. And there's a large vein of clay all along the eastern shore. So we just have potters every place. And the beautiful pottery is just, that's one of my favorite gifts for adults anymore. The weather gets a little warm and sticky in the summer, but that's better than fighting snow and ice and tornadoes and blizzards and such. And a hurricane, well, you get plenty of warning about it, so that's not to be feared. So I just get tucked down in my little house in my second home here at the museum, and just have the joy of my life, visiting with people and doing whatever little thing needs to be done. Get to tell about the fire truck, our gorgeous old fire truck. And of course, if a little child is just standing there with great big eyes, you can let Mama set him up in the seat and take his picture. That always thrills the kids. They can get locked in jail. The old jail was a brig of a ship that was being demolished in Mobile when they were building the city hall in 1928. And the town's always been known for its characters, and we still do have a lot of characters. We have one currently right now that lives in a castle, and he and his wife and the wife's father lived in the castle next door to it, built it. And so you can't get too much more of a character than living in a castle, walking around in these bright, ill-matched clothes just for attention. And the authors, the current people living here, of course, I put Donnie Barrett as top. It's one of the characters, top of the line. Dean Mosier is such a case. And even the election times are funny because of all the things that go on. Of course, they could be shortened at times. But it's just a really delightful place to be. Spend your time and just come here and see this beautiful, wonderful museum. All the collections we have, hear about the collections we have coming, and ask all the questions you want. The admission is free of charge. Your second visit costs the same as the first. And if you want to take pictures, just do it. So Donnie sometimes says he's going to charge for an exit exam, but so far everybody's gotten away free. come and see us anytime.
My name is Elsie Arnold Butgereit. My family moved to Fairhope in 1930. The underlying reason for us coming here was to put a little interest note from earlier, is that our mother was the first female teacher, the first woman teacher in Theodore, Alabama. She was born in Mobile and raised there. And my father came from Texas to run a plantation over in the Theodore area. And they met and were married and lived in a number of places. At one time during the Depression, when Daddy had to have work, the only way he could find it was going to Detroit, Michigan. And then they went from Detroit to Texas. Daddy was a native Texan, was born in Waxahachie, Texas. But through the teaching that Mother had, the experiences and all, she became aware of the School of Organic Education in Fairhope and became committed to her 8 children experiencing Marietta Johnson's theory of education. So that was the reason that we moved to Fairhope. The real reason that they chose Alabama was because Mother was born in Mobile, and then she had family roots there. And after she and Daddy had moved around the country, and one child after another was born, it came around to where they needed some family support to help with children and housing and that kind of thing, and that's what brought them back. And they went to live for a number of years on her sister's country property and home in Bay Minette, and that's where I was born. Daddy, one story I tell about our dad, he was a painter, and my daddy could walk into a room, and if you had a 10-foot wall that you wanted a line to go all the way across that wall, he could walk up to it with a paintbrush and just go right straight all the way from one wall to the next and be just as straight as if you had measured it by a measurement of some kind. And for some reason as a kid, I always thought that was really a remarkable thing that my dad could do. Somewhere I'm real bad about having dates that I can relate. But Daddy, while Mother went on to teach in Mobile, Daddy was here in Fairhope and painted houses for many, many of the local residents, and later went to work for the police in Fairhope. And for a number of years, Daddy was chief of police. And during the war years, I can remember we lived on 123 Magnolia Avenue, and quite often on Sunday morning we'd get up and we'd never know if there was going to be 1 or 2 or 3 sailors sleeping on the couch or in the recliner or on a pallet on the floor, because when Daddy was chief of police, that was at the time that the Navy was active at Barron Field in Foley, and every weekend the sailors would come to enjoy the beachfront and dance with all of us gals, if we were lucky, at the Fairhope Casino. And every now and then, one or two would get a little more to drink than they needed, and Daddy would bring them home and put them in timeout there in the living room, on the couch, or in the recliner, or on a pallet on the floor, rather than bringing them up to the local accommodations that were pretty uncomfortable. And then the next morning they'd go on. And from that action, from Daddy's action of that, oh, I can remember all through the years of him getting letters from the families, even, of these sailors that would tell them about how the chief of police of Fairhope, Alabama, treated them, and how much they appreciated it. During ensemble that time, Mama went back to, maintained her teaching career in Mobile County, because if she shifted from Mobile County, she would have lost her seniority, to use the term probably improperly, but anyway, she needed to stay there. And she would, all through the years, she would leave our house on 123 Magnolia and walk up to Section Street, which is a 2-block walk east, and that's where the bus station, the Greyhound bus station, was. She would leave our house and she would have one of these large shopping bags with the handles on it, and would go up to the bus station, get on the bus, and as the bus pulled into Daphne on the way to Mobile, Mrs. Tryon at Tryon's grocery store in Daphne would meet her at the bus door, and Mother would hand her the shopping bag that would have her list of groceries and what she needed in it. And then in the evening, when Mama came back from Mobile on the bus, Mrs. Tryon or whoever was there would hand Mother the shopping bag. And that's how she did her family shopping for a long, long time. And it's so much fun to, every now and then I will run into somebody that still remembers that Mother did that for a long time. I mentioned that Mother's desire was for her children to go to the organic school, and all of us did that. My oldest brother, Claude Arnold, maintains, I think that I would be right if I said he was in junior high when he first started. And he maintains that that was the first time that he really had a comfortable, happy feeling about participating in the educational endeavor. And then I can't remember if I said that there were 8 of us that went to the school. And as through the years that went by, my youngest sister, Jody, she was 3 years younger than I, and so she was going to be staying at home all by herself when I started into kindergarten at organic school. And Mrs. Johnson said, well, certainly not, to my mother. She said, certainly not. You're not going to leave that child completely abandoned by all of her brothers and sisters. Bring her up here. And so Jody went to organic school, I think it was 15 years, because she started way before she was 4 years old. Through the years, people have asked me what the organic school taught me. And I think they think I was being sort of flippant when I said, well, what they taught me was how to live and how to enjoy it. But the truth of the matter is, that is what they taught me. They taught me that each day was an experience unto itself. And sometimes I may not be able to determine what the experience would be, but I could always choose whether to participate in it or not. And they also indeed taught me to enjoy it. How fortunate all of us were to have teachers who were committed to the educational process because they loved it, and had the realization that their love for education would best be expressed by loving the children that they taught. And that was an important thing. All through the years, the big thing for me personally was the bayfront, the swimming, the water activities that came along through the later years of skiing and boating and the fishing, the spearhead fishing of, I can't remember the name, sheephead, underwater along the pilings of the pier. Back in those years, you could walk out on the pier and be where water was 5 feet deep and still see the bottom of the bay, clear and sandy and beautiful. My husband's family, well, let me back up, that while we were living at 123 Magnolia Avenue, one of the things that I think was so very constructive in my teenage years was that I could walk back and forth to the bay, down through the park at the top of the hill and out on the pier. If it was 11 o'clock at night, if it was 12 o'clock at night, or if I just was unhappy because something had happened to distress me or whatever, and I could journey down through that park, even if it was dark as could be, very few street lights at that time and all, and then out on the pier and sit there and just take in the beauty and comfort and solace of nature right there. And that was a very important thing to me all through my teenage years. I guess if I had any regrets about how things are in Fairhope today, or in recent past years, we have 6 children, 3 boys and 3 girls. I started to say earlier that my husband's family had been here all the years that we were. His folks actually came to Baldwin County before mine did. And though I say that Roy and I went to different schools together. I went to organic all the way from kindergarten to graduating, while he was going to Fairhope Public School. And yet, we knew of each other's families, but we never really met until about 6 months before we got married. And I say that one of the big reasons that our marriage has gone so well is that he was handpicked for me by my brothers and sisters. And they actually set it up for us to go on a date together one time. And I consider myself blessed beyond words for having such a wonderful husband and father and individual to spend now 56 years with. I tell people that really that's no big deal. The first 55 years were the only ones that were tough. And we've had a wonderful experience. But what I was tying this in with is that if I have any regrets about how things have progressed to use the term, in Fairhope through the years, it would be that now we have 19 grandchildren and 9 great-grandchildren. And they have absolutely no experience whatsoever of the familyness of the residents of Fairhope that I had all my life. Of course, I was extra lucky because I was the seventh of Mother's and Daddy's 8 children. Therefore, I got to know all of the families and friends that my brothers and sisters were associated with all through the years and went to organic school with or whatever. And then my youngest sister was 3 years younger than I, so I also got to know and be associated with all of her peers. So all through the years, I felt like I was just one of a great, big, huge, wide open family. And I regret that my children didn't have the opportunity to have that community sense of personal family. Right? Does that make sense? That for them to have, I had the feeling when I would walk down the Fairhope Avenue at any time of day or nighttime after movies or whatsoever, I felt like everybody knew I was there and everybody liked me and everybody thought it was great to see me. And I don't think that our children now get to have that opportunity, and that's sad. But we're still way ahead of the game here in Fairhope because we do have such a wonderful mixture of caring, loving, concerned people. I have a question here that says, how typical would you regard your family's journey story? It was probably pretty typical. I certainly don't view it as anything greatly different from families that came to Fairhope and established a lifelong connection here. I know one thing. My maiden name was Arnold, as I mentioned in my name introduction. And when my mother knew that she was passing on, she got my sister Grace to promise that she would maintain the family Christmas party. And we call it the Arnold Christmas tree. And Mother was smart enough to know that if she didn't make some specific request of a specific person, that when she and Daddy were gone, that there would, if we didn't look out, the family togetherness would dissipate, just because it does when all the individual families branch out and some of them move beyond out of the state and live other places. So she had Grace promise her, and Grace did a magnificent job of seeing to it. As a matter of fact, none of us would cross Grace, even if we didn't want to do it. We'd never say so, because she had a very special way of letting you know that you better do what you ought to do. And it's been so wonderful. We now have the Arnold Christmas tree every year. And from a real full year, probably right at 200, but usually somewhere between 150 to 170 family members come. And it's so wonderful for each year to be able to renew that family connectedness to life itself. Some stories from Fairhope. I remember, I don't know, but it was a couple of years ago. I think it was what was Hillary Clinton. I think I'm right, that she's the one that wrote that it takes a community to raise a child. And I believe that. I believe when a child is raised in a community that other people outside of the family unit can let a youngster know that they are cared for, that they are thought well of, that they want to endorse them, and all is a building, creative thing for a child to have that outside of their personal family relationship. And there was so much of that. One thing I had thought I would like to mention is another thing that was so meaningful to the early community of Fairhope is every Thursday afternoon, the stores closed at noon, and everyone would go for a potluck dinner at Cummings Hall, which is right here on, I'm going to say Bancroft Street if I'm right. I'm not sure am I right about that, but where the organic school was back at that time. And everyone would come to Cummings Hall and spend Thursday afternoon having a potluck dinner, and then folk dancing, or just visiting, or if people had brought board games to play, and that kind of thing. And that, I don't really know how many years that went on, but it was a wonderful thing to recognize the community spirit. And I think it probably molded many, many lives in a good, constructive, happy way. Now I started to ask, how typical would you regard your family's journey story? And for this area, and for all I knew and experienced in my childhood, it seems that it would be a very typical journey. And it says, so far as you know, does it seem to mirror the experience of most Americans? Or is it different? Well, you know, that's a question that has to either be put in, was it or is it? Because that's almost two different things about what things were like in 1935, 6, 7, 40, 50, 60. You can keep on going if you want to what it is now. And really all I can add to that line of thinking is that I just am so grateful for, repeat myself, the fact that my experience at the School of Organic Education taught me to enjoy and be happy, and to feel that I have an opportunity to build on everyday experiences in a positive way. Let's see. There's a question on here that says, what do you think about more recent Alabama immigrants? This was another thing that I think students who were fortunate enough to go through the organic school experience, I think that, you know, I just never felt any difference of people. I felt that there were actions that were right or actions that were wrong, but I never had any difference in the feeling of people because that just wasn't an issue when we went to organic school. You went there because that's what you did every day. That was your life. And everybody was there for the same reason I was there. So it's just the immigration thing is just something that has never been a stumbling block for me. And well, that's not true. I started to say, and I think the same is true of our children, but I believe that it'd probably be about a half and half of our children's attitude. And in a way, their journey stories would be so much more complex than what the history of my family's journey stories would be, that it's hard really to put that into context. But I do think the one thing that it has, their journey stories would have in common with ours is that the bottom line is how kind can you be to those that you come in contact with on a daily basis, and how much credit can you give to the possibility that whomever you are in contact with, they have the same hopes, the same ideas of bettering things for themselves as you had experienced through all of your life. And that way it ends up with that people being so different. We were real fortunate at organic school because Mrs. Johnson actually believed that it was a good constructive thing to have students of very differing personalities and backgrounds and all. And that was a good learning thing. One little story I'll back up on about early times in Fairhope is the theater that was on the corner of Fairhope and Church Street. That was a big thing for us to get to go to the movie there, and for several years there was a man that lived in Fairhope. He was a young, well, when I first became aware of him, he probably was on 20-ish or something like that. And he was somewhat different and had some mental incapability, and everybody was befriended by him and to him and all. But one night, Grace and Mimi and I had gone to the movie, and it was quite a long one and was over. And as we left, we became aware that this gentleman that lives here in Fairhope, for as long as we could remember, was following us. Well, we decided we better walk a little faster, so we did. And he just walked a little faster, and we walked a little faster, and then we almost got into a run, and he did the same thing. And so then we came dashing down across Church Street and down Magnolia Avenue and ran into our house. And we were so sure that he was just after us, and we felt so relieved that we were in the house and shut the door and all. Well, the next day, Daddy came on into work, and he saw this young man, and he came and talked to him, and he said, "Mr. Arnold, I saw to it that your girls got home safe and sound last night." And we've told that story through the years because it shows you that, you know, you can just read so much into people's actions that you don't need to. And see, but that's just a little side story. One, thinking of old stories and all, one thing that I love to remember through all the years was that I had mentioned that the Fairhope Casino, that was probably, there are two worst things that Fairhope did as we went through the years. One was to do away with the Fairhope Casino down at the foot of the pier, below the hill. And the other was moving organic school from the central location right downtown where it had thrived so. And say, yes, you're right, that's just a personal opinion. But when we would go and dance at the casino, here would come our daddy in his police force, and I mean in his police uniform, and he would unholster his gun and put it in the car and lock the car and come in and spend 30, 40 minutes dancing with us. Well, if you don't think we thought that was wonderful for our dad to come in and dance with us right there in front of everybody, all this bunch that comes over from Mobile every weekend and all. And that's something that I think was a building thing for all of his girls. And you know, it's hard to talk about all of these kind of things because you sort of feel like, oh, well, people don't care anything about that, or everybody would think differently than I do about that. But for what it's worth, I'm now 81 years old, and I'm not sure what that means, other than I have 81 years of being blessed with wonderful memories and life experiences. And I guess if there's something that I really regret that I personally have failed to do is I did not keep things written down so that when something like this came up, I would be able to really have a coordinated approach that people could really get something out of it. Otherwise, it was just fun sitting here talking and thinking and remembering, and most of all, being grateful.